In this interview, I sat down with Juliane Gallina, Associate Deputy Director for the Central Intelligence Agency's Digital Innovation Directorate. Juliane's public service career includes over 2 decades in the U.S. Navy and 10 years at the National Reconnaissance Office. She also spent over 9 years in industry at IBM, and she's a 2-time WASH 100 award winner. If you enjoy this video, please like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Also, we'd love to hear from you. If you have a question for the leaders of GovCon, please drop a comment below or email studio@executivemosaic.com. Hello, and welcome to Executive Mosaic's video interview series. I'm Summer Mayat, and here to speak with me today is Juliane Gallina, Associate Deputy Director for Digital Innovation at the Central Intelligence Agency. Juliane, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Summer. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate Executive Mosaic making time for us.
So, Juliane, you joined the CIA in 2019 as CIO. In your time thus far at the CIA, what is the most significant change you've seen in the intelligence landscape? How is the federal government being impacted by this, and how is the CIA adapting?
Well, Summer, I think it's really a clear shift away from counterterror and a pivot toward what we call hard targets. So really, principal among those, the People's Republic of China, or PRC, and Russia close behind, DPRK, or known as North Korea, and Iran. Those are sort of the traditional 4 hard target adversaries. And of course, the shift toward the hard targets is happening at the same time. We have to still keep an eye on counter-terror issues, because that, of course, hasn't just dissolved or gone away. But that's been a huge, huge change. So to go on a little bit, I'll tell you what it feels like internally and the impacts for us is that we've really had to reorganize or change the way we think about our tradecraft and what we do. And let me explain what I mean. Our agency has always been great at technology. Now, after all, one of my colleagues, now retired, Dawn Myrick, was the Director of Science and Technology, and she used to say, we can make everything from spacecraft to mascara. I mean, it's a great line, but it's actually true. I mean, we can build almost any technology once we decide to do it. The thing is, though, what we've used technology for, and the subject of technology that we've studied, has typically been about adversary use of technology for weapon systems, and then we would build the surveillance systems to keep track of that. So you think about the Cold War, that was pretty traditional. But today, we know our adversaries are really investing in technology and looking at technology as a way to maintain or achieve strategic economic domination. So now that means that at the agency, the way we advise policymakers, we have to advise on things that are really very much about emerging technologies as categories instead of how an adversary is using a technology to build a weapon, let's say. And that's changed the way we think about focusing on technology as an area. And so we created a new mission center called Technology and Transnational Mission Center. And we've also created for the first time an agency-wide Chief Technology Officer, all to help us in that pivot and that shift.
You mentioned emerging technologies. I'm curious, what emerging technologies do you anticipate could have the most impact on American intelligence in the coming years?
It's hard to say any one. I mean, I really think as you look at any sort of Popular Mechanics or Wired magazine, any of these big trade and technology journalist outfits, they're going to suggest different emerging technologies for the commercial world, which are important. Those are the same for the intelligence community. So artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, and cryptocurrency or financial technologies, very, very important. Biotechnology is another area. Microelectronics and next generation communications, and quantum computing. Those are sort of the big 5 that we're thinking about these days. It's absolutely critical that we keep an eye on them. Again, kind of referring back to my previous answer about our pivot and how we're organizing to focus on technology as a subject. We know that in all of those categories, adversaries are investing to either control supply chains for them, like think about the supply chain for chip manufacturing, for example. But these other industries as well create avenues for adversaries to actually disrupt American global economic superiority or strength, and they're seeking to undermine it. So we really have to keep an eye on all of those technology areas.
Juliane, I want to go back to the threats we're facing. Of the threats you mentioned earlier, what do you think is the biggest threat facing America today, and how are we responding?
Oh my gosh, that's a really big question, Summer. The biggest threats to America. And so, it sort of deserves a grand answer. And, I remember I'm associate deputy director of the Agency for Digital Innovation. So my perspective is definitely much influenced by the way adversaries use technology. But the thing that I find most concerning as an American and as a national security professional is that adversaries have indeed shifted away from thinking about traditional weapon systems as a way to maintain competitive advantage over their competition. And what they're shifting toward are things that are more insidious and more disruptive, and I think more threatening to American democracy. So, in short, to answer your question, what's the biggest threat to America? My humble opinion, again, granted, I'm not the president of the United States, but I really think it's adversaries who are investing in disinformation, misinformation. They're seeking to undermine American democracy by getting at a vulnerability that comes from our strength, our openness as a society, our willingness to create avenues for people to talk and have open and fruitful exchanges. It means that our people are encouraged to think differently and consider new ideas, but in those seams, it really does allow adversaries to inject some damaging or distracting, at minimum, information. And I worry that that's polarizing us as a nation.
Can you expand on that a little bit more? We're definitely in an era of information being weaponized, and there's a huge concern right now about disinformation, information warfare. What does this mean for the government and civilians?
So our agency has a long tradition of studying open source information. We call it open source intelligence, or OSINT. For those who are new to the subject, many people listening here are professionals who are very familiar with it. And I think it's really interesting because we have roots. In fact, our OSINT enterprise organization, Open Source Enterprise, OSE, has roots in an organization called FIBIS that predates the agency. The agency just celebrated its 75th birthday or anniversary, and FIBIS existed before that. I think it's 85 years old. So we have tremendous long roots in studying open information and really being students of trying to discern whether something is true, misinformation, or disinformation. So there's quite a bit of tradecraft there. And so in short, some of my answer is simply we have to keep doing what we're doing to make sure that we're providing really objective, balanced advice to policymakers and trying to ferret out what's fake or true. But I think that there are lessons that Americans can draw from our tradecraft, something our analysts have often talked about and thought about and practiced, was this really striving to be independent, nonpartisan, and objective. We treasure objectivity, but in order to be objective, you have to be a student of two things, and two things we talk about a lot. I'm sure there's more, and I'm not an analyst, but this is what I've learned from my analyst colleagues. We treasure two elements of information: the provenance and lineage of information. So provenance meaning where is the root source of this information? Where did it come from? And lineage meaning how did it get to me? How was it influenced or changed on its journey from its source to where it arrived? And has that changed the way I should be interpreting it? And I think both qualities of information are important for every layperson, anyone who's a consumer of information today. And in the intelligence community, we really have to be very, very disciplined and use technology to help us with these two questions. But if Americans just reading whatever source would consider, hey, where did this start? Where did it come from? And how did it get to me? I think that would help them really discern more about the quality and whether something is real or not, or something that they choose to consume and accept. Similarly, for us in our tradecraft, we really have to be careful about understanding ferreting out, like, where does this stuff come from, comparing it to the sources that we collect and review in a clandestine or secret way. We have to protect our sources to make sure we have something to juxtapose against the open source information. I think that will continue to be really important for the intelligence community to discern whether it's misinformation or disinformation.
So the CIA deals mostly with classified information, like we were just talking about, but that can sometimes be a barrier to working with industry or even other government agencies. How does the Digital Innovation Directorate aim to change that narrative and really enable more robust public-private partnerships, but without jeopardizing security?
You know, Summer, this is part of the reason why I'm here talking with you today. We're really embracing opportunities to be front and center, openly exchanging information with industry counterparts and interested stakeholders, both in government and outside of government. So we welcome and embrace this open exchange. That's one way. You may have noticed, and some of the listeners here may be tracking, that the agency is on social media platforms for the first time. LinkedIn, Twitter, and it's fairly prolific. My colleagues in OPA, or the Office of Public Affairs, have really made a push to make sure that people have a way to understand how our agency operates. So just that basic knowledge is opening up some doors. My boss, Jennifer Eubank, the Deputy Director of the CIA for Digital Innovation, she's been out on LinkedIn quite a bit with a lot of new content. I'd encourage people to follow her and check her out. It's really interesting to see this shift. I would also say it's changed the way our interest in developing partnerships with industry has changed the way we're doing business with industry counterparts. So we know with adversaries like the PRC, or the People's Republic of China, and Russia and others, in order for us to compete, we really need to think about our partnerships, right? It's almost like a numbers or a volume issue where we're not going to do this alone. So our allied partners are important, and really, really super important are our partnerships with U.S. industry. So the way we're doing business is changing. We are becoming much more open and helping industry understand what our challenges and requirements are. That was a very secretive process in the past, and I would encourage everyone to go look and search for something called Digital Hammer, which is a broad area announcement, or BAA, that we've published very openly. It's completely unclassified and anyone can read it. It's a general invitation to industry to bid. Industry who are traditional contractors to our community, but also non-traditional and big technology companies who might consider a federal government or national security to be a very minor part of their business or their market. So we're completely changing. But ultimately, it comes down to partnership. I'd also mention that we've been making some really large pivots recently by having the new recreation of tech fellowships. So industry partners who are interested in doing an exchange, having an agency person work with them, or having one of their employees work with us embedded, is a great way to build partnerships and understand one another better. So we're pivoting to that. And also we have a CIA Labs, which is a great way for people to co-create and work on research and development projects. All of these are unclassified initiatives, and if anyone wants to follow up with us, I'd welcome them to hit us up either on LinkedIn, through direct messaging, or just reach out through the BAA channels that are published.
Juliane, I'm curious, what has changed from the time you began your career to now, and what advice would you have to someone entering the intelligence community today?
Oh my goodness. So I think everything has changed. I mean, let's think about the big picture here. Russia was really scary in 1988. We didn't know what they were going to do next and how they were going to control those countries that were on the border between what's now the European Union and the former Soviet Empire. Sounds different, right? At the time, even in popular culture, everything was different, right? Tom Cruise had just starred in a movie about naval aviation, glorifying naval aviators. Sometimes, honestly, Summer, I feel like nothing has changed, right? The adversaries are still fundamentally the same. Even my first assignment when I was a new signals intelligence officer in the Navy, or cryptologist is what it was called, my first assignment was in the Pacific Theater, and I was focused on the PRC and its investment in a blue water navy and studying how China was pivoting to have more strategic and hemispheric ambitions. my goodness, like sometimes I just think nothing's changed. But then, of course, everything's changed. If you think about the backdrop of technology and what we're able to do, the ubiquity of things like ubiquitous technical surveillance, the ability to monitor and access and see what people are doing with remote sensors, has moved from being something only that could be done from spacecraft to now really almost like a collaborative, cooperative with the devices we carry in our pockets, our mobile phones, our smartphones. I mean, the technology backdrop has just been stunning and different. And I don't think anyone could have anticipated back when I joined the community that the change in personal technology would just completely disrupt how we think about the intelligence business. Not only how we monitor and track the adversary, but how the adversary can access and track us. Those are really fundamental challenges shaping the community. But the problem children in the world still probably pretty much the same.
Juliane, you mentioned your time in the Navy, and I know you came to the CIA from IBM after 9 years there. Can you speak about the challenges and rewards of reacclimating between government and industry?
Sure, that's a great question, and I appreciate you asking it because not too many people ask me about that experience in industry and how it's informed what I do. It comes up from time to time, but I do think it's really important. It's shaped the way I think, and I believe it made me a much better, more effective senior executive in government, my time in industry, because I really am empathetic to how our industry counterparts think about meeting government requirements, the fact that they really are striving to have outcomes that help advance the government mission. And I appreciate that because I think sometimes if you're not open to that idea, you might think of the relationship being more adversarial in a sense. I mean, that's probably a strong word, but a government person who's never been in industry might feel more guarded about how to negotiate and how to come to a co-collaborative solution, or how to even contract or negotiate through contracting decisions. Having been on the other side, it really helps me, I think, understand or begin to be open to the perspective of my industry counterparts. I think that's been important, and I've tried to carry that back into government. I also think having come back into the agency as a senior without having grown up the entire time in my agency has really helped me see across some of the organizational boundaries within my own agency. And this is sort of kind of a new epiphany for me, but I realize now that it was an advantage to come in and not feel very parochial about my directorate or my particular part of the agency. I've been very open to collaboration and partnership across the directorates inside the agency. I think it's unlocked innovations for us, some organizational changes, openness to new ideas, because I really don't feel like, candidly, like the budget in my own directorate is the agency's budget. It's the director's budget. And so when you operate that way, I think it makes one much more open to collaboration with partners. We have to recognize we have to partner to get through all the challenges we have, and it's made me open to just thinking about things as an agency officer, not as a DDI officer or an officer from my Digital Innovation Directorate.
Well, Juliane, thank you so much for your insights today and for all the work you do at the CIA.
Thank you so much, Summer. And again, thanks to Executive Mosaic for making time for us and giving us an opportunity to have our voice amplified in the community.